Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another FIFA 21 video, where today we have got a video on how to score more goals in FIFA 21. This is something that a lot of people have asked me for recently. A lot of people are struggling maybe to create chances, and a lot of people ask me as well, what is the best shot type to take? Where should I shoot? How should I shoot? What are the best ways to score? So I thought today we'll do a video and we will cover all of the best ways, all of the most effective ways that I personally use them. And I have done them in order of what I personally have experienced to be the most effective for me and the ones that I use the most. So starting off, first and foremost, we have got shots across the goal. Now, cross goal shooting is really OP this year. We've got a great first example here, just to kind of highlight what we're talking about, really. And across shooting goal, shooting across the keeper is really effective this year. Last year in FIFA 20, it wasn't super effective. It was kind of all about near shot and near post shots and things like that. But this year, great fake shot here inside. This is a great skill move to do, just to buy yourself that little bit of time. Sets ourselves up perfectly for that cross shot goal. Now, being, the angle that you shoot as well for this cross shot is really important. You don't want to be like too narrow on the angle. If you're aiming sort of around near sort of the corner flag and things like that, you're going to miss, massively. So the angle you shoot is very, very important. Make sure you get that right angle. That's why a fake shot or a ball roll is a great skill move to do, because it just sets you up with the perfect angle to shoot from. But it's a really effective, shooting across goal this year. It's probably the most effective way to score, in my opinion. Something that, it has a very high success rate. And also, a thing that really benefits it is, I don't think weak foot is super important this year. Now, not to say that weak foot is not important at all, but, I don't think weak foot is the be all and end all, because shooting, just generally, shooting is very, very overpowered this year, as long as you know to take the right shot in the right position. And that's something that you kind of can't really be told what to shoot, because it's very situational. So it's very difficult to give somebody advice on, you need to take this shot here and this shot there. It's very situational. But having like a 3-star weak foot player is not a bad thing this year, because shooting at the moment is very, very overpowered. And there's lots of players like an Adama Traore, for example, or a Saint Maximin, who even on their weak foots they may have 3-4 star, but they still score from like ridiculous positions. And that's why having a 3-star weak foot is not a bad thing. But shooting across the goal is super overpowered this year. It's just getting out of the habit of shooting near post. For me, I wasn't somebody who was a massive near post shooter last year anyway, but getting out of that habit, if you are somebody, don't be afraid to take those shots across goal, because they do have a pretty high success rate. Kind of regardless of what your player's statistic and stats are, they do seem to score a large percentage. Now, that doesn't mean it's 100% guaranteed, but it is probably your most likely shot and your best opportunity to score. So if you get this opportunity, make sure you do take it. Now, next up, we have got near post shots. Now, I did mention that near post shots are something that are, they're something that were very overpowered last year in FIFA 20, and I still think they're very effective this year. It's very clear, and you see in this example with the Mobile, that we made the right decision, because the far post shot wasn't on. There was a couple of defenders right in front of us. There's a good chance they probably would have blocked it. So that's why shot selection is very, very important. Now, I don't get it perfect right, every single time, but it's something that's just practice, and it will come to you naturally the more you practice. But you'll know when you can shoot far post, you'll know when to shoot near post. And near post shooting, I think, is something that's quite underrated. A lot of people I see don't use the near post shot, and it's something that I still think it's very, very good this year. It's the keeper's positioning this year is a lot better. I think that's why a lot of people are kind of put off by the near post shooting, because the keepers tend to cover the near post a lot better than they used to. And that's why a lot of people do kind of not necessarily go for the near post, because if they're covering the near post more, it means the far post is open. But that far post shot is not the be all and end all and the only shot you can take. You can take some of these near post shots, as we do. And again, shot power is very important as well, knowing how many bars of power. You can see roughly that we tend to kind of put around 1.5, 2 bars of power on most of the time. In most situations is normally good enough to score. Obviously, the better shot power that the player you're shooting with has, that helps as well. Then you don't need to put it on. But typically about 2 bars of power is enough, what we normally do. And then we're just pressing the B button on the Xbox controls. That is what we're doing to shoot. We're not doing anything fancy other than that. But near post shooting is very, very good this year, and definitely one of the best ways to score. And you can see with all these clips, it's something that I use a lot. It's not something that I just use sparingly. It's very, very good this year. The third best way that I tend to score goals is cutting back to the penalty spot. Now, something that I would think was more overpowered last year and something that was a lot easier to do. But I think not necessarily easier, maybe not the right word, but it was more common last year. But I think because this year there are multiple ways to score goals, that this is not like the primary method for people to score goals, but it's something that you can still score plenty of goals with, especially if you're somebody who attacks a lot down the wing. Cutbacks are something that you're going to be used, but I think this year it's a lot easier to kind of play through people, so you don't necessarily, like last year in FIFA 20, attacking down the wing was really the way to go with scoring goals, because wing play was so overpowered. Now wing play is still overpowered this year, but it is a lot easier to play through people in the midfield and create space in the midfield. So you don't see as many cutbacks nowadays. Now I do want to throw in a couple of clips from my opponents as well, because they do score some nice goals as well, showing how cutbacks can be used very, very well. But like I said, good example there. Just able to play through me a little bit too easy for my liking, and then just able to find a pass to get a tap in. So cutbacks, not quite as common as they were last year, but they are still a pretty reliable way to score. If you are somebody who does attack down the wing, make sure you do look for those cutbacks, because they are going to be there. Play that extra pass in the box and you will always get that extra shot on goal. Now, method number 4 is counterattacks. This could potentially be a little bit higher up on some people's list, but for me, counterattacks are not something that I personally do too much, because I tend to be somebody who dominates possession a lot. I tend to have a good sort of 60% of the ball most games. So obviously, the more of the ball I have, the less attacking opportunities that I will have. So at the end of the day, when my opponents have less of the ball, they're more likely to get counterattacks on me. But counterattacks are very, very good in this game. They always tend to be very good, and especially if you want to be really successful with counterattacks, you've got to know skill moves, you've got to have quick players, and you've got to be patient. Don't just pass the ball forward as quick as possible. You can see that we are countering our opponents really effectively here, but we're not rushing passes. We're not just charging forward, sprinting in the midfield, because that is a big no-no. You don't want to be sprinting in midfield. You do need to be being patient in midfield, waiting for the play to develop. Let your opponent come to you, let them back off, and that's just going to give you more opportunities for your players to make runs as well. More opportunities for you to trigger your players' runs as well and get them to run into good space. That's very, very important this year to utilize that. But counterattacks are super important and a great way to score, especially, like I said, if you've got pace. You can see good opportunity there for my opponent. There's plenty of space out there on that right hand side for his Hazard, and then he just was able to find a cutback and score. But counterattacks are so good this year. Again, the right personnel is so important, and making sure you are patient, because the spaces will open up, especially for people that do play like balanced on their fullbacks, for example. It's always going to leave the space open on the wing. A lot of people, though, do like to play, especially like the higher up level in FIFA you get, when you get to sort of Division 1 and Division 2 and things like that. A lot of people do play with their fullbacks on stay back while attacking, and they're a lot more solid defensively. So counterattacks, for that reason, are not as common when you play against better players, but certainly when you play against some of the lower caliber opponents, counterattacks are a great way to score, and it's just being patient and you will always get that goal. And then method number 5 is crossing, like the low driven cross, things like that. Now, for me, crossing it's an extremely overpowered way to score this year. Make sure you do have assisted crossing turned on, because that's going to make crossing like pinpoint every time. So when you have assisted crossing on, it's going to play it directly to your player rather than maybe in front of him, maybe rather than behind him. So make sure that you do have assisted crossing on. Now, crossing is super overpowered this year. It's just not something that I personally use too much. It's not to say that it's not great, but it's just not my primary method of scoring. I normally don't think about crossing the ball too often unless I absolutely need to or it's super obvious. I tend to like to play my way through the midfield and create chances that way. But crossing is a great way to do it. But make sure you do use those driven crosses, those LB and X crosses, and the RB and X crosses are the best ways to score crosses this year, because they're going to make sure that it's pinpoint. And on top of that, when your player does go to hit the ball in the back of the net, it comes off his foot like an absolute rocket. So crossing is super overpowered. It's just not my preferred method of scoring. I do prefer to score goals different ways. But that is it for this how to score goals tutorial. So hopefully you did pick up some great tips. Hopefully you have a better understanding of how to create chances, and you can maybe pick up some tips as to you can see how we move and how we make decisions in the box and how we're able to finish off those chances. So if you did enjoy the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you drop a thumbs up as well if you did enjoy the content. But that is all today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.